Some things in life present themselves for a reason. Often it takes us a lifetime to acknowledge, understand, or appreciate it. But typically, there are lessons to be learned. One's past can often explain one's behavior. That doesn't make it acceptable, but sometimes compassion and forgiveness can break through the hurt and pain and set you in a direction of healing and feeling whole. My guest is joining us from Cape Town, South Africa, and is originally from Germany. She's going to share stories of her mother, Gabriele, or Gabby. Daniela, or Dani, has written a book about her relationship with her mother. It's translated into Lonelier Than Alone, and we'll talk more about that later. She's a psychotherapist, an interior designer who encourages unapologetic self-expression, and we're going to find out exactly why she's chosen the path that she has. And I'm really excited to have Dani Gottschalk with us here on this episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother. Hi, Dani.
Hello.
It's wonderful to finally get a chance to meet you
Absolutely.
and
I'm looking
speak with
very
you.
much forward to it.
We are going to talk about Bohoho,
Yeah,
which
right.
is a
Oh,
beautiful resort or a place for people to go visit in Cape Town that Dani has done the interiors for. And I so embrace and am happy for you. And I think your message can help so many about how we start to express ourselves. And it can be very healing, right? Your
absolutely.
choices and your
Absolutely.
colors and your specifics. So it's really, really great. So we'll get into that as well. I would like to hear a little bit more about your mom, Gabby. You grew up in Germany, is that correct?
Yes, I grew up in Germany with my mom and my dad as a single child. So my mom had a miscarriage like 10 years before me and was told she can't have any children. And then suddenly I came along, and I think I desperately wanted to come to planet Earth. So I just like against all odds, like manifested in her. And yeah, I was a Caesarean, and she was basically telling me my whole life how terrible that was, and how in how much pain she was after that, and that she lost all her hair because of me, and this whole like guilt tripping, which I just felt guilty about. I didn't identify it as it at this time. So for the first 10 years, 15 years of my life, I was thinking my mom is my best friend.
Yeah.
All my girlfriends envied me for the relationship I had with my mom. Little did I know that I was completely parentified, that I was her psychotherapist, that she dumped all of her loneliness, her fears, everything onto me, and had little space for me or my concerns. So I basically knew if she complains to me about what scares her, I cannot, because I'm also then having fear, but I can't express to her because that will make her fear even bigger. So I just swallowed it up, which left me with a lot of fear and with a lot of, I must always rise to the occasion. I must save her. I must save the world. I must save everyone. And
That's a lot. That's a
yeah,
lot.
so I basically did not really had a childhood, also compared to a lot of people who, whatever, are children of drug addicts or in really abusive families. What I know now is that what happened you would call emotional incest. I also shared a bed with my mom until I moved out with 21. So nobody ever questioned that. No, I mean, we weren't poor. We could have moved in a 4-bedroom apartment. The official version was that my dad is snoring, but that wasn't, I was kind of a protection shield to my mom against my dad, who wasn't violent or anything. She just was not interested in having intimacy or anything. So I had basically no privacy. I had no, I mean, I had my own room where I hardly never was because I kind of felt I must take care of my mom. I had to watch her every move. I was always scared she's dying any minute. She was always sick, or at least she thought she was sick. She was a big hypochondriac. And I was basically always worried about her, like always worried. And my only goal in life was to make her life more bearable, to make her happy, to bring a smile upon her face. And I became basically the clown, the therapist, the entertainer. I would have done anything to save her from her deep pain and sadness. She had a horrible upbringing, and she had a really horrible mom. I mean, compared to her, I for sure had a good mom, but I still did not have a good enough mom because she wasn't emotionally attuned. She was dissociated most of the time. She was physically there, but her mind was always
Right,
elsewhere.
but you
So
thought this was normal. You thought this was a
I thought this
normal
was normal.
mother-daughter relationship.
I thought
When
this was
did you kind
normal.
of figure out that this is not healthy? Not until you were a young adult, or
I see. Yeah, I think when I came into puberty and basically started to have interest in boys and started to become my own person. So basically, not that symbiotic bond. So that she had to acknowledge that I'm an own person who's probably soon going to bow out her own ways. She started to really hate me. So she had all these subtle down-putting comments on me. She wanted to make me feel insecure. I could never do it right. It was never enough what I was doing. She was basically sabotaging every step I took away from her.
well,
And I
because
couldn't,
you were finally interested in other things in life, whether it was boys or you were becoming a
yeah,
teen. So
yeah.
she was not so much your priority anymore.
Yeah, and as you know, as she turned me into her mother, and her real mother abandoned her, she was about to be abandoned by her substitute mother, which is her daughter, again. So she could not even see me as her daughter. She would never, she was never conscious about that she turned me into her mother, but I'm now conscious about it. So she was anticipating the abandonment that also then came on a healthy level because I was out and about, but internally I was so still immersed with her and engulfed by her that all my thoughts were always every day, no matter what I did, at her side. I never
Like
had
guilt, feeling
yeah,
guilty that you
guilt, always worrying about her, always listening to her complaints. I mean, she never opened the door when I came from school with open arms. She never really wanted to know what's going on in my life. If she wanted to know, then to take control over and use it against me or
yeah.
whatever. So, but I couldn't believe it because I was convinced that I had the best mom in the world. So, and so were my
Wow.
girlfriends. So everyone was thinking we have that great bond, but nobody could see, including myself, what the cost of that bond was. Because in a way, I was spoiled. I got the best clothes. I had unlimited access to sweets and candy. I could watch TV as long as I wanted to. This were all easy, but I was emotionally exploited, and I didn't realize that.
But she also, that's part of the controlling thing
Yeah,
that right? She gives you all these material gifts
yeah,
to keep the bond so you'll stay with her.
mm,
It is controlling, right?
yeah, it is. But
And
I
your
mean,
dad play any role in this? Do they have any kind
yeah,
of
that's
relationship?
always funny when I talk about it. My dad was just very sweet, and he was like a soft, almost weak kind of person. You know, she was his first female, so it was his first relationship. He was 7 years younger than her in a time where that was kind of unusual. My mom was married before, so his parents were strongly against that marriage, and I think it was his attempt to separate from his own overprotective mom to marry a woman nobody um, was a
Yeah, it's
fan of.
amazing that I
Yeah,
picked this topic for my podcast because moms are present, obviously in everyone's life, but
yeah,
wow.
absolutely. A little bit like Charles and Camilla, like so like but I mean my mom was so needy for a family, but then at the same time felt so rejected by his family who had it kind of together, and she's
Oh,
coming from a horrible background. So it was a no-win situation. I think my dad was just so helpless regarding, because my mom, I mean, in the meantime, I'm sure she was a silent borderline personality disorder. I'm sure she was on the spectrum. I'm sure she has complex post-traumatic stress disorder. But as a child and before I studied psychotherapy, I had no clues of that diagnosis. I know she was a lot of times sad, but we all didn't know what it was. She was just very complicated. She was constantly upset and sad, and you had to walk on eggshells around it. But as this was a normal in our household, it wasn't even, I mean, my dad really should have pushed her to go to therapy or put her on an ultimatum, you know, she probably would had half a life. But so everyone was sitting it out. No one was happy. My dad engaged in out of marriage relationships. And I was basically, I mean, my dad was so loving, but he was not there to protect me from her. I think he did not even see what was going on. It was basically like I was sacrificed as a stuffed animal, you know, here's your kid, play with her, you love her.
well,
So
and you and mom are bonding.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But
exactly. So
he ran away, unfortunately.
he ran away. He was still around. I mean, he still lived with us, but he always like for after when I was 15, he started to have girlfriends and did his own thing. But he was there. He took her to the doctor. They had like a shared living situation, but also she told me everything about it, like to as
Oh
to a best
gosh.
friend.
Yeah.
There were no taboos from the bedroom to there was basically no boundaries. So, and I was also never allowed to have any boundaries. So I had to listen to all of that. I had to take her side. And when I started to take my dad's side, because he never talked bad about her, she talked bad about him all day, every day to me. So, and then I mean, I had a job, and on top of the job, I studied marketing, and I had relationship problems myself. And she kept on talking about that. And then it was the time that I really said, I can't take it no more. And then her disgust of me, like her got bigger and bigger. I could actually feel that she is completely against me. It was from then on just a fight. So there was never again a real loving moment, or I mean, we share the same humor, so we had some laughs in between. But it was basically a whole struggle. And then my dad, who was kind of a little bit, he was a small rock, but he was still my rock. He was supportive of me where he could.
Right.
He helped me in my shop, in my restaurant. My mom never helped me with anything. So she was always like too sick, too incapable. She didn't have a driving license. So she could never do anything, you know?
Right. So
And my, yeah,
her your maternal grandmother had a similar background to your mom. Is that correct? That
yeah,
the trauma was passed on from your maternal grandmother to your grandmother to your mom
yeah,
rather, and then to you.
yeah, yeah.
But you can, for someone who's trying to change their life, do you use all of this fuel to help you break out and figure out who you are, whether you have to run away or, there's only so much someone can take. So you have to, I would imagine, one has to figure out, I'm going to use all of that to inspire me to become the antithesis, or it's going to encourage me to forgive her and move on with my life. How does that happen? Because you're finally doing what you want. You're expressing yourself with your interior designs. You became a psychotherapist. My gosh, you had a lifetime of an education just in your home yourself. So you are probably very compassionate and understanding with your patients, your clients. So what do you think the best way for someone, say they're in a similar situation of what you experienced, does one move forward?
So
If they're
definitely,
aware that they need to move forward.
yeah, they definitely cannot start with forgiving them, because that will never bring them anywhere. People want to skip the anger part, the realization part, the grieving part, the separation part. They want to immediately jump to, but I forgave my mom. But it's not true. People are never been forgiven like that. So
It's
first
in
you
their
have to,
bones. It's too deep inside them. They have to be angry. They have to go through all the stages.
yeah, and they have to really hit rock bottom and also realize in some cases, no, my mom never loved me. And it's not because I'm unlovable, because she's not capable of loving. And don't tell yourself she loved me in her own way. It's not true. Some people are just not capable of love, and they still become mothers and fathers. And to realize what is love and what is not is such a bitter pill to swallow, but so important to move on. And I would have never imagined 20 years ago that I can say that without bursting into tears, that my mom did not love me. And she also did not love me in her own way. She used me. I did fill her void. She has not been loved herself. She really can't open up to the opportunity of love. So she loved me when I was very small because I was all her hope that her inner misery would change. But as she didn't do any steps herself to heal and stayed in the victim mode, as soon as I was just not an enlargement of herself, as soon as she could not use me as a narcissistic object, I had no value for her anymore. And that has nothing to do with love. That's narcissism. And that does not make you like an entirely bad person. But as not every person can paint, not every person can love. We all think that everyone out there is capable of loving. It's not.
Your mom didn't have love from her own mother. So it's like
No.
repeating generations. So other than interest in boys or whatever, when you hit puberty, how did you know that this was not healthy?
Just also the fact how much space she took in my life, in my thoughts, that there were, and also like my friends, they're like, why do you always think I mean, if I couldn't reach my mom, I was thinking she's dead. And so many, and also like when I needed help or when I went away to South Africa for the first time, all the mean letters she wrote me, they were just mean, from a certain time on, she was just accusing me and holding stuff against me and that I'm not taking care of her enough. There was no words of encouragement. She never said, I love you or I miss you. She would always just guilt tripping. So just being in that space that you feel so claustrophobic all the time, that you have no one to turn to, like other mothers or sons turn to their moms for everything. So the roles were just reversed, and I became so unhappy. And then I started to do therapy very early in life, was 23, and just to get out of that space. And I could not, at this point, I wasn't even sure that it's my mom. It was basically my first relationships who didn't work out at all. And by finding out, where do I know that pattern from? It all played back to my mom, and it was very hard. I mean, even till she died, I was aware, but I could not really let go. So I was never free to have a good relationship or any relationship, because she just took up so much space. And now that she's dead for over 10 years, I just tell all my clients that they never shall allow that. In Germany, we have a saying, I don't know what that's in English, but if someone is very tall when he's sitting and you can't see anything in the cinema, but actually he's a short person. So we call it a Sitzriese, like he's a giant when he sits. And your parents are giants, but they're actually not.
They're
That's the
human.
place.
They're human.
Yeah, they're
Right.
human, and it's also, I mean, I get a little bit angry when I read on Instagram, always like, be gentle with your mom, it's her first time of living too. How do we know? And in my next living, I will say that again as an excuse. So even if it's her first time, she could have done something. She could have, if she would have the ability, she could have just for once have thought how things make me feel.
Often my guests will say she did the best she could with what she had. And when
That's definitely true.
you agree, she did the best she could
I
with
agree.
it. That would make me very upset when I heard my guests talking about that after similar situation, of yours. She was neglectful or, emotionally, physically. Um, but I have come to understand that and appreciate it. But that said, it doesn't mean that you can't allow yourself to go get help, to become healed, and to move on with your life, to separate from that. You have to learn to separate from all of that, and it's a long
Yeah.
process.
It's a very long process, and she did the best with what she had is not an excuse. It's just an explanation. So not to take it on that you think she could have loved another child more. I mean, that's a lot what people think, that my mom could not love me because something is internally wrong with me. No, she could not have loved another child again. And then it's like, do the best with what you have. Yeah, so if I have 10 euros or 10 rand or $10 today, and I buy this and that for you, but I'm also never work, it's like, that's what I have. And I make no effort in getting more money by working. Then it's not an excuse anymore.
Did your mother, did your mom ever work? I shouldn't assume.
She did work. She had like 3 days, 3.5 days. She did work, and it actually that was good for her. She should have gone more out, but she was very like introverted, and she felt also rejected. She had the worst thing was her immense minority complexes. So she could not really, I mean, that ended up with me being friends with a horrible girl because her mother was the only woman she could relate to, that was her friend. So I needed to stay friends with that evil girl, which was her daughter. And I sacrificed myself in that so-called friendship. She was really a menace. She was so mean and sadistic. But I know her mother is the only contact my mom has. And my mom would also never had stepped forward and say, no, this kid is treating you terribly, so we must cut ties. No, so I stayed in that friendship, which really broke me as a kid, for the sake that my mom has at least one friend.
One friend. So again, you are there soldiering on for your mom. Is it better to, if possible, to cut ties and walk away? Or is it more helpful to become aware and to study and go to therapy and distance yourself, but still engage with it, whether it's your mother or your dad or whoever is this oppressive person in your life? If you just move across the world, did you eventually just leave?
I did only leave when she was dead. I would have loved to leave before just to get away from her, but my guilt was eating me up because anyway, I still love her. I still love her today, but she really damaged me a lot, and I see clearer than ever what she did. And I broke contact only for a year, which was a little bit of help for me, at least, to not like sit on the phone and whenever the phone rings, something terrible. So, I mean, you're totally in this spiral all the time. But I encourage all of my clients who have parents with similar personality disorders like narcissism or borderline or whatever to cut contact, because it's the only way. Because these people only feel their own pain. They will never feel your pain. So when you cut them off, they will be sorry, but only for themselves. And they will try to guilt trip you into contact. But you will only find peace if you have cut them off. And if they make amends, if you have really the feeling, they also work on themselves, they go to therapy, they come around with a different approach, they see your side, which 99% will not happen. But if it's happened, you can have, because it's hard for every child to cut off their parents. But sometimes it's really the only way when you're already 45 and you can't find peace in yourself and you can't find a relationship, and the person that's always on your mind is your father or your mother, and the negative narrative in your head, then you must cut ties. These people have a chance to behave different. They're not using it. They can't access it. It's just harmful to entertain you only because that person gave life to you. It's
my gosh, but it's a vicious cycle. Narcissism is terrible, and I'm so glad. Now I would love to share with my listeners how you have learned to express yourself in your design work and Bohoho. And I think it's very important because it's you finding yourself, your true self,
Yeah.
not how your mother painted you.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like being able to say everything, be everything, take up space, not giving all the space to the other person. Just expressing yourself, no matter what anyone thinks of it, just everything that's in you, just like a big, big explosion.
Mhm.
And that's the best you can do because we cannot only express ourselves verbally, we can be verbal, we can be creative, we can create the spaces we live in, we can create everything around us, we can create our working place, we can create our friendships. It's basically, we can create everything. We are not forced to stay stuck in a bad parental situation, in a bad marriage, in a bad relationship, in a bad friendship, in a bad house, in a bad apartment, in a bad anything.
Oh, I
So,
love that.
yeah.
And it's true. We don't have to. We are, again, I think it comes down to self-love too, right?
Yeah.
If you've had a parent that is so controlling like that, you don't love yourself because you've always had to put love to the other person. But if we love ourselves enough, we will realize that we can make a decision that is best for us to move on, whether it's in a family relationship, a romantic relationship, a work relationship. We don't have to keep that negative mantra in our head anymore. I think that's the most
Yeah.
important
And
thing.
I mean, honestly, staying, when I hear all the couples who say they stay together for the kids, they don't. They stay together for themselves and maybe because they learned the same way from their parents. So we, in a way, for us, it's very important to stay truthful to our tribe, you know? I mean, for some people, it's very difficult to get rich if the parents were very poor, you know? In a way, we hold on to where we come from. But
Sure.
I mean, the bravest thing is to teach your kids how to separate. Because otherwise, if you live like I stick with your dad, also he's humiliating me, or also there's no love, we never touch each other, we're not nice to each other, then your kids will also not be able to leave. So, I mean, even if they want to have mom and dad together, that's just like for a short period of time to showing a kid that there are boundaries and there's unacceptable treatment and that you separate and how you separate. I think that's the most valuable thing you can teach a kid because staying together is for everyone more easy.
Absolutely. And oh, I just had a thought and it went out the window.
I know
Oh,
that.
no, no, no. So, as a parent, you have children with the hope that they are going to have a wonderful life, a successful life. That one of the biggest things in society today is that they go to college, and yet some kids can't even, they're not ready to go to college. They can't even handle leaving home for so many reasons. And how silly of us to have these incredible beings, and we're preparing them to leave the home ship, right? Or that's my job, is to send my children out into the world as balanced and healthy and happy as they can be.
Yeah, if you have the heart and the greatness to do that, I
To
think a
do
lot of
that,
people
yeah, it's hard.
get become children to own them and to own them forever. So finally, I
Yeah,
create something for my own that will never leave me. And if we, so that's unfortunately, I think if you're not prepared to raise your kids to become independent from you, which is in itself heartbreaking, but then actually you can't be a parent. Then you must get a pet.
come up with another occupation.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness. So I have all your Instagram information and I will list it in my show notes. But we can find Dani Gottschalk, and I will spell that out for you on my website as well. You are on Instagram at TinzelTown Design, the Boho
Yeah,
Ho, the
right.
Boho Ho.
Yeah, that's two
and
different accounts. Mhm.
explain to people how they can remember the name, the Bohoho. You mentioned to me before
Yeah,
we
it's
started.
like Santa Claus. It's like ho ho ho, just with a B in front. It's like Bohemian Holistic Boutique Hotel. That was short for that.
Yes, and I have the information for that as well. I'll put in my show notes, as well as your Facebook info and your website. Dani, I'm really, this has been wonderful, and it's such a pleasure to speak to you from across the world in Cape Town. It's magical. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jackie. Bye.
And we will be back next week. That's okay. We will be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.